It was thought this would be a pretty routine day in the House of Representatives. A Speaker of the House would be elected. The swearing-in ceremony would happen with the new members of Congress. It has been anything but, though. 3 votes that did not go House former Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's way. So we're joined by Joaquin Castro live from Washington, D.C. Of course, he represents the 20th Congressional District here in San Antonio. Representative, thank you for joining us. How would you describe what happened today?
On the one hand, historic, but also very chaotic and in many ways sad. The first day of the House of Representatives is usually a lot of pomp and circumstances. It's people having their family over, their friends for celebrations, people being sworn in, obviously, first-time members of Congress. And so this situation has not happened in 100 years where a speaker has not been elected on the first day. And we've been through 3 votes now where Kevin McCarthy has failed to get a majority to become speaker. And I'm not quite sure at this point who Republicans, if they're going to abandon him as their candidate, the majority, the lion's share of them, or they're going to go to somebody else at this point.
Truly, this has not happened in 100 years, since 1923. That's the last time that the election of a House Speaker went to multiple ballots. So talk about what can happen from here. The House adjourned today, will be convening again tomorrow. But what are the next steps for the newly sworn in Congress while we wait for this election? Or are there any steps that can be taken?
Well, the interesting thing is that this is the first item of business that the House of Representatives has to undertake. And so we can't do anything else. We can't vote on any bills. We can't make committee assignments, anything until a speaker is elected to preside over the House of Representatives. So it leaves the body, the legislative body, in a kind of limbo. And that's what makes it so chaotic, is that you're basically in limbo until a speaker is elected.
So let's talk about, what happens when eventually a speaker is elected. I mean, you're in a much different position than you were, just a month ago. I mean, instead of the majority, you are now in the minority. What are some of the things that you want to see done by this Congress? And are you optimistic that bipartisanship, which has been a dirty word for so long, can be accomplished?
I'm hopeful, Steve. I served 5 terms in the Texas State Legislature, and I'm now in my 6th term in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I've been able to work across the aisle with folks on many different bills and pieces of legislation. But the Congress itself has been very gridlocked. Divided government gives you a chance for both sides to come together and try to find compromise on the big issues that are affecting San Antonians and affecting all Americans, whether it's rising inflation, rising home prices, the immigration issue and border security, the cost of health care, a lot of things. But, part of the challenge that we have right now is that the Republican Party is really at war with itself. And, it's moved to the right since Donald Trump became president and afterward, in this Trump era, I would say. But even then, you've got this very intense fight going on among Republicans about the direction of their party. And so, I don't know at this point who would be on their side of the table if we're negotiating on these big issues. It literally is impossible to say at this point.
A lot of people would say, well, of course, you as a Democratic politician, not unusual to hear criticism of the Republican Party, but you have served in several different Congresses. This is a unique situation that we're seeing with this obviously very divisive election of a House Speaker. So do you think that chaos that you've described, does that give you any indication about what progress you think might be made once Congress does get up and running?
Well, I can say this. It depends where Republicans go from here. If they end up with a speaker who's even further to the right than Kevin McCarthy, who's already moved very far to the right, but if they get a Matt Gaetz, a Marjorie Taylor Greene, Andy Biggs, one of these folks who really came along during the Trump era and are scorched earth politicians, then it's going to be very tough, I think, to find common ground with those folks. I mean, I think at that point, even Republicans won't even be able to find common ground among themselves. So it really just depends where they go, you know. And I spent 10 years in the Texas legislature where you had this long-held spirit of bipartisanship, and there were even members of the minority party, whether it was Republicans or Democrats at the time, who were able to be chairs of committees. You know, that kind of bipartisanship in Washington, unfortunately, has been unthinkable. I mean, it's just a very different tradition. It's kind of a winner-take-all. It's a free-for-all fighting tradition that's very different than what I experienced in Texas.
I want to talk immigration, border security. You know, we can even talk Title 42 if you want. But I mean, it is a very part of the reason that that Kevin McCarthy is having trouble being elected House Speaker is because they have such a slim majority. You know, he basically needs all but 6 Republicans to vote with him, is my understanding. And he's not getting that. Democrats are holding firm and voting for Hakeem Jeffries in this whole thing. Does that help give Democrats maybe a little more power than they normally would have to deal with things like border security? Are there Republicans that will work with Democrats on something like border security, immigration, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we passed as Democrats within the last month, we passed about $2 billion. My son's peeking into the shot here. We passed about $2 billion in funds to help process folks as Title 42 was coming to the end and to buffer border security. You know, and so we have tried to take action as cities like Del Rio and McAllen and El Paso and San Antonio have asked the federal government for help in dealing with the folks who are seeking asylum. And so we're going to continue trying to work in a productive way among ourselves, but also hopefully with the Republican Party in the House and in the Senate.
You know, while the selection of a House Speaker is very much in limbo, so is the future of Title 42. That's something we keep talking about. So if and when that does come to an end, are there any resources or that aid you mentioned, things that you want to see some of these border towns, border cities get in order to help them with what's expected to be an incredible influx of people coming across the border?
Yeah. First, I want to make sure that all of our border towns are well taken care of in terms of having the resources they need to get people on their way. So it's not just a city government like San Antonio. As you all know, San Antonio set up a migrant resource center that really has become a model for other cities that are dealing with this situation. But also for a lot of the support organizations like Catholic Charities, for example, that has helped countless migrants who are seeking asylum in the United States, get them on their way to a lot of them are meeting up with family members in other cities, whether it's on the West Coast or the East Coast. So even as they're moving through Del Rio or San Antonio, the lion's share of them are not staying there. They're moving somewhere else. But there's a process in getting them to where they're going. So I absolutely believe that we got to do everything we can to help our Texas cities get the funds they need to do that.
All right, Congressman, before I let you go, if your son's still there, give him some camera time right now. Let him come on camera. And I want to ask you what you expect to happen tomorrow.
Well, my wife got him back into the bedroom over there.
Okay, all right.
But look, I mean, for the sake of the country, I hope that the Congress, that the House will elect a speaker and that we can start governing and working on legislation for the good of the American people and for the good of San Antonio.
All right, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Congressman Joaquin Castro, thank you so much for sharing some time with us.
Give our best to your family that came up to watch you get sworn in again. I'm sure that they were like, what's going to happen now, Dad? Yeah.
Keep up to date with all of San Antonio's top news, weather, and so much more by clicking the like and subscribe buttons below. And once again, thanks for watching KSAT.